Chase, you're live on Talk Heathen, and if we can, let's try to make it just a little quicker because we are getting towards the end of the show. What's going on, Chase?
All right, we can do this as quick as possible. I got a thought experiment about animal rights, and it's called Name the Trait.
Okay. I'm ready for you.
I love a game.
Okay, cool. I just don't want to overwhelm you. Stop me if you need to. So basically, the idea is, the question is, so Name the Trait, NTT, is a consistency test, basically. So it asks the question, basically, what is the difference between humans and animals that makes it okay to slaughter animals but not slaughter humans? And so instead of actually running NTT on you, instead of running Name the Trait on you, because it can make people uncomfortable and stuff, and I love y'all, I don't want to make it a debate or anything hectic. I could just kind of explain the process to you and how, like, some people give their common answers and then the responses to that. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, cool. So some people will say in response to that question, what's the difference between humans and animals that makes it okay to slaughter animals but not humans, is that animals have lower intelligence. And so that's the trait that they're naming, is that animals have lower intelligence than humans. And I can grant that, right? We're smarter than animals, sure, on average. But then the question would be, well, what if we found a human who had that trait of lower intelligence than the average human, such that, you know, this human was, let's say, severely brain damaged or mentally disabled, such that they're only as smart as like a 3-year-old child or a dog or a pig? Is it okay to slaughter that human because they have lower intelligence? If intelligence is the trait, then it should be okay to slaughter this human. But most people say, no, it's not okay to slaughter mentally disabled people, right? Or anybody of lower intelligence, because it doesn't, we all seem to agree, for the most part, most of us agree that just because somebody's of lower intelligence, that's not a justification to cause them harm. In fact, they need protection and stuff. So then we have to so then the person will have to kind of go back to the starting point and name a new trait, because if they don't feel comfortable with that situation, then it's not the fact that lower intelligence was the trait that makes that differential treatment. And so then they'll say, maybe, you know, oftentimes they'll say things like, well, it's DNA. It's the fact that we're human and the animals are animals. It's not lower intelligence. Or maybe it's, you know, and so we'll say, okay, well, what if we found an alien species, you know, big hypothetical, but what if we found a species that was not human? They had different DNA, but they looked just like humans and they act just like humans and they think just like us, equal intelligence to us, but they have different DNA. Would it be okay to slaughter this alien species for you know, out of just for pleasure of the taste bud?
Yeah.
And most people, you know, sometimes people will say, yeah, it's fine to kill aliens. And it's like, well, okay, you know, or, you know, even though they look and act just like us, or sometimes most people will say, no, it's not okay to kill, like, you know, those individuals because they're so similar to us. And so then we have to, again, go back to the drawing board, that initial position. Well, what is the trait then, you know? And sometimes they'll say, well, it's a combination of those two factors, lower intelligence and DNA. So then I ask, well, if we had that alien species who looked just like us, except they're mentally disabled or brain damaged to some degree, right? To where they're only as smart as a 3-year-old child or a dog or a pig, but they look and act just like a, you know, basically a mentally disabled human, but they have different DNA and they're lower intelligence. Do those two traits now justify slaughtering this individual? And some people will say, yes, it's okay to kill mentally disabled aliens that are just like indistinguishable from your regular mentally disabled person. And some people are like, no, that's disgusting, that's terrible, it's wrong to do that. So we have to go back to the drawing board. But if they're consistent, and I'll wrap up real soon here, I know I've been ranting, but if they're consistent and they say, yeah, it's okay to slaughter the mentally disabled aliens because they have lower intelligence and different DNA, well, I would just call that a reductio ad absurdum, where they're consistent, yes, but their argument reduces to absurdity, where they look atrocious, and most people will think that's pretty disgusting behavior to do that. If that was someone there, you know, that would be a terrible thing to do. And so the other option is just to realize that lower intelligence and different DNA, or the different shape that somebody comes in, is irrelevant morally, and that we should respect animals and aliens and anybody who's different, and just be nice and not slaughter them.
Okay.
There's a lot of things there.
A lot of things there. Sophia?
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking, maybe just because in the interest of time and we're kind of like trying to wrap up, maybe we can respond to you off air just so it doesn't become a huge conversation. I don't know. But either way, I would say that unfortunately, I think kind of the whole idea is a bit of a reductio ad absurdum, because we're trying to reduce the experience of being human to a specific trait or even specific cocktails of traits with people who have maybe never thought about this before. I think it's a fun thought experiment, just because I think it's good to critically examine why we are okay with eating meat, and I think it's okay to be uncomfortable with that and to think about like what our limit is for that. So my mother recently, she participates in a lot of autopsies, she stopped eating pork because it was just too similar to human. And I think that it's interesting how people come to these conclusions. But I would say that whenever we start with an argument that's just like, here's name a thing that makes humans, it's already a little ridiculous, which can be okay for a thought experiment, but I find it maybe not as useful because it will sort of stop at a thought experiment. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Dan?
Well, when Plato set out to define a human being and announced that the answer was a featherless biped, Diogenes, quite famously, went to Plato's school and presented a plucked chicken and said, "Behold, a man." Right? And so Chase knows me. Chase, we've had conversations. Chase, I'm a vegan, same way as you. We have very similar ideas of animal, treating animals, right? And so I think this is a great tool to get people started. And I imagine that's your intention, is a tool to get people started to think about the traits in which we actually make our decisions, right? And I think for that purpose, it's a great conversation starter. Of course, I don't think your intention is this, but if anybody is trying to, seriously suggest, obviously to construct an entire moral foundation off of just using this particular method, there might be, some additional thought that would be put into it. And again, I'm not claiming this is what you are saying is what is to happen. I just think, obviously, as Sophia pointed out, there may be some limitations, but it is a good starting point. I do think examining, particularly in animal ethics, what makes human beings so much more sort of above reproach when it comes to the decisions we make in how we decide to eat things versus other beings. There is something to be said about that. There is pause to be had. But it's a tale as old as time, trying to do this whole, figuring out the basics through trait identification, right? Anyway, I guess that's my thoughts. Chase, what do you think?
Yeah, and just to wrap up real quick, I guess, one thing I'd say is, if it, a burning building, is happening and it's two individuals in that building and it's, either a puppy, I can only save one, it's a puppy or Hitler, I'm going to save the puppy. In that case, doesn't matter,
yeah, sure.
Right? One case where like species ain't got nothing to do with it because the puppy ain't gonna harm nobody, But and then the last, but I'd love to talk to you guys more on Discord in your ACA, the Atheist Community, Atheist Community of Discord, the ACD on Discord is going to be a fun chat afterwards, so people should join that. And I would just encourage people to watch the documentary called Dominion with Joaquin Phoenix. It's on YouTube for free, Dominion on YouTube.
Alrighty, thanks so much, Chase. Appreciate you chiming into the show. Go ahead and let you go.